Hello, everybody. We have a very nice, intimate, small class in inner outer space today. And this is a Zoom room, but I am also offering it on YouTube just so that people can start to become familiar with this work in the safety of their own homes. So I actually was thinking about sort of doing I like to call it the inception meditation. Where we kind of start from the outside and make our way deeper and deeper in. And there are a few different breaths that go with that. And one of them, well, two of them are actually continuum breaths. And one of them is sort of an adaptation of the continuum breath. So I'm just going to talk to you about the breaths first. So the first one is, it's called the theta breath. It's an Emily Conrad breath, and it's like a soft TH sound or a soft S. So like your tongue is behind your teeth and it's like, it's like you're letting the air really softly and gently out of a balloon without the squeaking sound, but just a slow sort of deflation. And if it feels comfortable, you just let it last for as long as it feels comfortable. So let's just do that breath a couple of times. You can close your eyes, leave your eyes open, whatever works for you. I need to slow down my voice. I notice that I am like a speed talker. And sometimes when I watch things back, I go, oh my God, I am talking so fast. How can anybody possibly take in what I'm saying? So I'm trying to slow that down a little. So we're going to work with this breath, seated, laying on your back, walking, driving around in the car, whatever it is for you. Doing the TH sound. We'll do it like 3 or 4 times or for a minute. And you don't need to make it last as long as I'm lasting. We just go at the same time. Inhale whenever you need to. If you need to take resting breaths, that's fine too. So and then letting that come to a rest and just feeling into yourself, feeling into your body, feeling where you are now, tuning into sensation and sort of awareness and presence within your body, just feeling where that is and how that lands. So that was the theta breath. Often theta breath is described as sort of a bifurcating breath that sort of separates the two halves of the body. I don't know if that is what it feels like for me entirely, but I've heard other people say that it's like a barge just moving through the water. But it's your experience is your experience. So it may be like that or it may not be like that. So we're going to take the next breath, which is like the theta, but we're just going to make it into even less. So I'm just going to come close and show you. So instead of this, it's going to be like this. You're going to let your tongue kind of free up inside your mouth, and you don't need to make the hissing sound, but it's like if you take the hissing sound and you just drop it down. If the hissing sound version is a 10, you drop the energy down to like a 3 to a 5. So it's similar, but it's just in your mouth. And this isn't a right or wrong thing. Your version of it may be very different than mine. So you get to interpret whatever this means to you. And that's the right thing, however your interpretation comes with it. So taking the theta breath and just taking it back and making it a little bit more internal. We'll do it for a few rounds. Eyes open or closed, whatever's comfortable for you. Yeah, you'll barely hear anything. It's almost like the sound of air inside of a cave, just a light blowing sound. And your tongue maybe is moving a little bit inside your mouth, or maybe it's kind of still, maybe it's spreading and widening. Resting breaths anytime you need them. I'm bringing that one into a close and just tuning into your tempo and sort of tone, your energy pattern now, since we've dropped down a little bit more. Just feeling where you are with that. Listening into your own body. And then we're going to go one layer deeper. And this layer is the Luna breath. So the Luna breath is kind of like that sound that we just did, that middle breath, and dialed down to almost nothing. And somebody else described it as the sound of a seashell on your ear, but it's happening inside your body. So if you're familiar with Ujjayi breath from yoga, this is like the dropped down version of Ujjayi breath from yoga into like a homeopathic level. So it's almost nothing, but it sounds almost like internal space. No worries, Quentin. I know Abby has to leave early too. So taking it in. Where there's almost no sound. Oh, I've got to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. And the Luna breath may feel like, oh my God, I have no idea what this is. Or it may feel like, oh, I'm coming to this really deep interior space. So just noting how it is for you to imagine what that breath sound is. There's not necessarily a right or wrong about this. Good. And then letting us come back together. And it's just me and Bonnie and Abby now. And Abby is in a car. So maybe it's probably just me and Bonnie really participating on this. So Bonnie, feel free to come off or on as you feel fit. If you have any questions, just pop up and ask. So let's now take this idea into our awareness of space, right? So we're going to think of we can do this with our eyes open, and we can even do this in movement, just feeling into the space around us. So seeing what's around you, feeling the air around you, feeling the space around you, feeling what is surrounding. It's even coming in, like as I breathe, I'm like, oh, the air isn't just around me, it's also coming in and out of my body. I'm participating with the air, but letting it be sort of more of an external moment of awareness and letting ourselves kind of pan the horizon line. So we've got this brainstem, primitive brain information coming in that, oh, I'm at home, it's safe, nothing's happening here, there's no danger. So I can relax a little bit more into my body, into being a person, in my nervous system, in my safe space. And then from there, So that layer, we've been in the outside. Now maybe let's do it with some hands-on, maybe just feeling skin. So feeling, I think we're all a little touch starved right now. So it could be, I can feel my shirt, I can feel my skin on my skin, taking a little skin bath, or hair. Like I like to do the 10 little dragons running through the forest. So that could also be however you need to participate with this, just touching in. Oh, hello, I'm a person, I'm here, feeling into that, feeling my legs, maybe light touch, maybe kind of squeezing. It could also be tapping. I like the sort of, there's that nice light finger tapping, but then there's also kind of like the Tarzan tapping where it's a little bit more into there. So getting this awareness of the outer layer of our body, the container of our body, our skin, and just feeling into that. So we're having this participatory touch where we are feeling ourselves being touched and touching ourselves, feeling what we feel like underneath that. A little body bath, coming to that first layer that we connect into the world, the skin, that layer, the container, the outer surface of our bodies. And then from there, coming into the surface just below the skin. And this could be with touch or just your awareness. I'm going to shift back into awareness and maybe some movement and come into the awareness of my superficial fascia. So it's the layer under the skin. It's fascia and it's got a lot of fat in it. So it looks very yellow, most of it. And it's kind of like this is my metaphor for it. It's kind of like our resonant layer that connects us to the outer world. It also protects us, right? If I bang myself, there's a little bit of softness before it hurts too much. Or if I'm being touched, like my skin feels it, and then there's that layer of superficial fascia, which is feeling it. And if we were talking from a connective tissue therapy, Bindegewebsmassage modality, it's also where a lot of nerve endings are coming into. So we're also in our nervous system in this place. I mean, we're always in all of the things, but we can think of the nervous system coming out to that superficial fascia. And when we move, we're also aware of movement through the superficial fascia. We're aware, that's a lot of our kinesthetic awareness, our proprioception, our awareness of being in a body can come from that superficial fascia area. So feeling into that, and maybe with that space of just that surface layer, and then under the surface layer, which is covering our whole body, except for maybe our eyelids, I think, feeling that support, that whole system of support that's holding your body on the outside. It's a second layer. It's actually incredibly strong. So superficial fascia, really, really strong, really supportive. And let's say we were starving, our body would go to that to start to pull the fats from that if we needed more for the rest of our body. It's a weird thought, but sometimes people are really freaked out by the idea of fat, but at the same time, that is what nourishes us in many ways. So kind of change the relationship to that outer layer, that soft outer layer that's supporting us in our humanity, and maybe become less judgmental about other people's soft outer layer. But tuning into the superficial fascia as a structural form that really supports our systems. And then from the superficial fascia, taking it a little deeper into the muscle. Taking it into the muscle. There's also fascia running throughout your whole muscle. So we could go muscle, we can go tendon, ligament, we can, all the stuff that's helping you mobilize, form, it's filled with your blood. And as we work muscles, we feel them become more pumped up, more blood filled. So let's tune into that with a little bit of movement, maybe some spiraling, maybe a little pushing and pulling. Even if you're not actually pushing and pulling anything, imagine what it would be like. So we're accessing muscle, accessing strength. And not only do we feel strength within that muscle tissue, we can also feel lightness. Oh, it's easy. I'm strong. I can lift my arms. It's not hard. there's easiness when we have some strength. So tuning into muscle is not something that is sort of one-dimensional, but really multi-dimensional in so many layers, and tuning into that sense. And I'm going to actually start to move bigger as I move into my muscles, because I want to feel my quads, I want to feel my legs. So I'm going to start to just let my body move with the idea of muscle and pushing, pulling, spiraling, getting a really three-dimensional way of moving through muscle. Carving through space, letting our bodies shape into the space. So it's not just sort of mechanical, but it's really full of three-dimensional, organic. What does it even mean to be organic? But thinking of it being like alive animal tissue, feeling what it is to engage with the space around us, engage with the room, maybe using, like I've got this ottoman here, I've got chairs, I've got a bar, I've got the walls, I can push, pull a little with the walls, with the wall. Letting your body play. So this doesn't have to be beautiful dancing by any means. It can just be experimental, playful. And from there, let's go, we were kind of muscles and fascia. Let's go like full on bones and joints, tendons, ligaments. The things, ligament connects bone to bone, tendon connects muscle to bone. So starting to play with that. How are we in our joints? And when we move, we hydrate the joints. So movement hydrates joints, synovial fluid is in there. That is what is greasing up our joints, moving, and it's a move it or lose it fluid. As you move, you stimulate the production of it. So giving yourself this interior WD-40 grease up, hydrating with movement. Maybe that's too mechanical an image. Lubricating your body through movement. Connecting into the breath. Connecting into the lungs. So let's take it from the sort of structures into the organs more. So the air, the breath, the lungs, the system, the blood, the oxygen is moving through our body, through our blood. So thinking of that, aliveness through air, lungs, and nourishment as it moves through our bodies. Moving into our muscles, into our organs, giving us nourishment and taking away waste. So we're moving into that fluid system. And from there, let's move into the idea of the lymphatic system. We're going to change the movement a little bit with the lymphatic system. So lymph, it doesn't have a pump, like the blood has the heart to pump it. But yeah, I went lungs into blood. So I went kind of lungs, heart, without actually mentioning the heart. But now we're coming into lymph. So lymph doesn't have a pump of its own. It is stimulated by deep diaphragmatic breathing. That stimulates lymph, and also movement. And it's nice to draw from the outside to the inside, drawing from the edges of our body in towards center. So like lymph coming from the edge, from the fingertips through the arm in towards our heart and lungs is a really nice way to get that lymph fluid flowing. If we're doing it in our legs, we'd be coming from the bottom up and in. So it's almost like you're putting on a really big sock or putting on your pants. So you're stimulating the movement of the lymph fluid to come back to center and move back out. So that is part of your immune system, lymph, getting that lymph fluid to move around. Yeah. And then let's come back into this idea of organs. So let's go back, since I kind of skipped over the heart, but we've got the lungs right there in our rib cages. And then inside is our heart kind of nestled in there. So let's just let the chest, lungs, and heart mobilize a little bit. That may move out into other parts of your body or not, but And the reason I was actually coming into that, because I was thinking of the diaphragm. So the diaphragm, which is the big, it's actually a big piece of connective tissue and muscle that is helping you breathe. And it's not like, it's kind of like a balloon that's going up and down, but it's on a bit of an angle. So it's kind of going on along the line of your rib cage. So there's this kind of a dimensionality in there. And actually, you're drawing in and out, that's moving up and down with that breath. So all the movement of that diaphragm, which should be really slippery and slidey underneath your lungs, all of that movement is massaging your lungs and your heart. Also down, it's moving down into your organs. So if we breathe deep down into the lower lobes of the lungs, our organs are going to move down and get a little bit of movement as well. And I think that it's such a cultural thing for us to think that we're supposed to suck our bellies in, or we have to have this very rigid posture where there's no movement in here. Let's just soften that idea. Let's let the belly relax. These muscles are just going to do what they have to do. We don't need to make more happen. It's weird. I feel like my this camera just feels so low to me right now. Normally I think I stack things up to put it on, but oh well. I'm just having my own moment of recognition of this is weird to be teaching down when it would be nicer to be teaching up or to teach straight forward. So I think I'm going to just relocate the computer over to here and put it a little higher. It's called adjustment. Still not high enough, but it's somewhat better. So, okay, that feels better in my body. Okay, so let's just play with rising and sort of falling. Rising up, maybe with lightness, and coming down with strength. So that in Laban is effort. Rising and sinking. Rising with lightness, lightweight, and coming down with strength. But feeling the sense of the up and the down. And the reason I was feeling that up and downness was because of that idea of the diaphragm moving up and down. And very flowy, very sort of Tai Chi flow. We also talk in Laban about growing and shrinking with the breath. So you could just get bigger on the inhale and then bring it back down, coming in on the exhale. And this also, what I'm moving in is the vertical, right? I'm moving up and then moving down. So in space terms, I'm going with the vertical dimension. We might say that this was the vertical plane, although really I'm just mostly going up and down. So each side of my body is moving in the vertical dimension. Just feeling what that feels like, letting that expand out, maybe bigger and smaller, or rising and sinking, growing and shrinking. Yeah, these are all Laban terms. And just feeling, how is that landing in your torso? How is that landing in your core? How's that landing with your breath? Just the idea of up and down. Are you feeling like, oh my God, can we stop going up and down? I want to go side to side, or I want to go forward, backward. Or is it just nice to rise and fall? But right now, for some reason, for me, that feels really, it feels really good. One reason might be because it brings me into myself, right? When I'm in this up and downness, it's very much in the vertical. You can see what my gesture is. That's me. So it's one way of centering, finding the up, lightness, and the down, strength. We could also talk about connecting heaven and earth, right? If we're doing some Tai Chi, we've got the heaven, the sky, the earth, the ground, finding that connection and finding ourself in the middle of that connection. So just, yeah, it's one of my favorite things. I love that. And you know what? There's also like, when we're in this idea of connecting heaven and earth, like you can just be there. You don't have to do anything. If a hand gets tired, switch it to the other hand. Just being in your body, being in your moment with this up and downness of vertical. The rising and falling of the breath. The opening up. You can try the sounding if that's interesting, just even if I change pitch up and down, right? It's like, but the shape of my mouth is in that vertical. Ah, which actually when I say ah like that, it reminds me of going to the dentist, which is not my favorite thing. Let's just shake that out for a second. Just feeling, we went through a lot of things. Today's really more of a experiential, playing with it, coming to resource through movement plan. I wanted to do that sort of inception idea of going in and then also going back out. So let's go from the, so we have the up down. We can start the up down with the breath, but we can also widen and narrow with the breath. So maybe a nice way to start feeling the lungs and the ribcage expand side to side is with that. You can add the hands or not, opening and widening, and then coming back and narrowing it in. Feeling what that feels like to open and to close. And actually, I think I want to start to exaggerate the opening and closing. So the opening out, and then the closing where I'm really going to close and cross. I'm going to close it in. So feeling myself open and widen, and then narrow, and I'm just going to cross all the way so that my narrowing is really enclosing myself. I'm closing into myself. Widening out and opening. I can go the other way, narrowing and then closing. And feeling into my own body. Does one feel better right now? Does it feel good to expand? Or does it feel good to come back in and cross? So when we cross midline of our body, crossing midline, here's my midline. Now I'm crossing it. It has a different effect, like our brain has to do slightly different things. Part of it, and some people have a hard time with that midline idea. But part of it is because like in the corpus callosum, the sort of grand central station where everything is coming from one side to the other, our left brain is controlling the right side of our body and our right brain is controlling the left side of our body. And when those cross over, it just adds some interesting complexity. I don't think the other side of the brain, it doesn't switch who's controlling what, but it just adds something. So try it also for fun, for funsies, by maybe balancing, opening up. You can cross back, you can cross forward, you can fall over. Doesn't have to be this perfect horizontal side-side thing, but just feeling what that's like to reach out and cross over. Yeah, I did a lot of balancing things in an earlier class today. So feeling what it is to let yourself maybe go off balance and then come back in. Or does it feel more unbalanced when you're closed? Or does it feel more unbalanced when you're open? Just tuning into what that is. Actually, I'm ready to get rid of that. Let's just shake that out for a second. Big breathing. So we played with that widening and narrowing with the breath. So one of the things that is in Laban movement analysis is the sort of body level participation and of movement, of any kind of movement, of all kinds of movement. And within that, in the system that I studied in the US, we have Bartenieff fundamentals, and Bonnie actually studied with Irmgard, so hallelujah. And Irmgard just brought a little bit of more of a body application to the material. Laban was very much out there, space, effort, body, dance, but I think Irmgard brought in this more systemic approach to looking at body. So some of the underlying principles in the Irmgard-Bartenieff work are like core support, breath support, weight shift, navel radiation, growing out, coming in, working with the developmental patterns that babies go through. So first babies are just in their babyville, right? As their sort of awareness starts to come in and out, which could be sort of seen as navel radiation, but for babies, a lot of it's eyes and mouth. There are a lot of rooting responses. After a little while, they start to develop their upper versus lower. So one could almost say it's the vertical, the upper versus lower. As they start to push, pull along the floor, maybe they start to lift up their heads, upper versus lower. And then the next one is sort of one side versus the other side, side to side, where if I was a baby, I would be rolling, learning to roll. So in some ways, if we say that side, we could kind of align that with the idea of horizontal. First, we sort of line up the vertical, then we start to get the horizontal. And then the next pattern is contralateral, working across your body, which when we walk, most people are in a contralateral pattern, crossing the body. And this, and walking forward and backward, is kind of aligned with the sagittal. This doesn't mean it's always that way. Things can be different and change, but I'm just showing how some of the layers of the system work together, where we can start to think about them as a whole system. And depending on what we're interested in any given moment, different parts of that system will pop out to us. So again, with this developmental patterning, this contralateral pattern, cross-body movement, which doesn't have to be crossing your body. It means the upper right is working with the lower left, upper left, lower right, that type of thing. So then there are exercises that are just this. This is an energy exercise. Cross, they call it, there's contralateral, cross-lateral, same thing. And that, again, works with that wiring in our brains. And so when we do those types of patterns, walking, running, some types of swimming, it kind of acts as a nervous system reboot for us. It does something, that contralateral work does something to our energetic pattern that is a resourcing for us. Now, if we're going to be really sick, if we're already under-resourced, going for a big walk is not the answer. But if we're fairly healthy and we go take a big walk, the chances are we're going to be able to process a lot for our own bodies and our systems during that walk. So super healthy, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, getting that contralateral pattern to go is great. And if you don't have the chance to go out for a walk, then maybe, and you want to make it smaller, you can do like this type of movement, just where you are, this type of movement, just crossing. It doesn't have to be, I go and do a major event. It can also just be, I just bring awareness in. I even feel my hip to shoulder relationship. So I can feel across my body, this diagonal hip shoulder, and I'm kind of playing with that contralateral pattern. So another part of Bartenieff fundamentals is this idea of rotation and rotary factor. And we played with that early with this idea of spiraling. So if I just move like this, my muscles are going to form in a certain way. If I start to add some spiraling, there's a little bit more of a three-dimensional relationship within the tissue. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like Laban space and learning to move in all of these different ways and like creating a framework around yourself so you're balancing out both sides of the body moving in space is so vital for the fascia, because the fascia is really a three-dimensional tissue. And when we move it, when we make demands on it, it adjusts and it becomes more healthy. So if we sit all the time, and this is actually a Tom Myers thing that I heard him say, that if we sit all the time and we don't move enough, for a couch potato, the fascia in our body, the integrity of it is kind of like felt. And like if you boil wool and make felt, it's like, it's not organized. It's like, but if we start to move more, the fascia becomes more responsive, coherent, hydrated. It's more systemically accessible and working with us. So I feel like when we start to move in these different places in space, accessing our kinesphere, we're requiring these different patterns like spiraling, rotating in our tissue and fascia, which makes it much more healthy. I know a lot of women often have that frozen shoulder as they get older. If we learned young to play with that kind of spiral pattern. And when I go into the spiral pattern, I'm just going to take this onto another layer of sort of Bartenieff. I can be thinking about my collarbone, my clavicle, my upper arm bone, my humerus, the two bones in my lower arm, my radius and ulna. So there's my radius and ulna. The radius radiates over the ulna. So they're parallel here. When I turn, one has just crossed over the other. So when I'm engaging that pattern, I can also think about my scapula and how my scapula moves with that. So my scapula, my clavicle, my humerus, there's a rhythm. When one moves, the other starts to move. There's a relationship. And the more sort of internal support I offer myself, the healthier, the less likely to have a rotator cuff injury, the less likelihood to, get that stuck shoulder thing, the more I've integrated this idea of my whole body working together. All right, so I've just been talking for a really long time. And I know we have a small class, so I don't want to pressure you into saying anything, but I'm just curious as to how it's landing for you, what you're noticing, what's of interest, and if you have any questions. So feel free to come in. And if you don't have any questions, you can give me the thumbs up in the reactions and I won't bother you. Hello, hello. Anything to say, anything to communicate for you guys?
Hi.
Okay.
You look great today, by the way. And yeah, for me, it feels like in between. It feels like sort of a mixture of what Friday's class might be, but yet also formal. It's like I'm in between, and I feel I don't know. I feel like I was doing freestyle following you. There were some times where I felt, and I'm starting to become more concerned with this because of different things that come up in my life, is that I'm in between. I take little pauses, and then I also kind of do little exercises like rubbing my feet on the ground to try to ground myself, and then go back to following you. Because sometimes I get so high from the class that when a stressor comes, it feels like a nerve has been touched and I need a little bit more grounding. So I've been working with that while we were doing the exercises. And I really like losing touch with you visually and then going into your voice and then trying to follow you back from the voice. You know, the voice really helps me. And also, I've been trying to do some work with eye movement and seeing if that affects my anxiousness. And so I've been trying to slow down my eye movement and maybe time it with the rhythm of your voice. So I feel very lubricated in my shoulders, the front part of my neck, a little bit around the under part of my palate, or where the, you know, where underneath the palate where the tongue rests. My eyes feel a little bit less tired. Um, and my breathing isn't the way I want it to be, but it doesn't, I don't feel like exhausted. You know, I don't feel tight in my lungs and belly and stuff. So I definitely feel lubricated in my lower back, back of the shoulders and in the wrists and fingers. Very lubricated. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great. Thank you for that feedback. And it's funny because I was also thinking that this one is a little bit more like the Friday class, a little bit more freedom. And just for anyone who's wondering, the Friday class is a playful connection embodiment circle. And people from all over the world come, and it's a lot of ridiculousness and fun and silliness, but it's a very loving, kind, and a wonderful community. So to me, that's been a huge resource for this year of being isolated so much from other people.
Oh, good. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. And so just, yeah, naming that is also out there, and it's free and it's open to anybody, and you can find it at embodimentcirclesonline.com. And it's on Fridays at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Daylight Time. Okay. Bonnie, you want to say anything? How are you doing? Abby, anything?
So sorry, Laura. I'm like watching around right now and listening. So good for the cross lateral movement. And that's what I like, but I kind of like phased out of slightly. So sorry.
No worries, no worries. It's totally fine. I mean, this is what it is. I'm like showing up however you want to show up. Bonnie, how are you doing? You can give me a thumbs up or you can unmute, whatever you want to do. Okay, great. I see some. So let's just play a little bit more with some of the Laban Bartenieff ideas, since we're kind of not just going with space. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm good with what we're doing. It's just you got so interior. I thought I need to be interior.
I really needed that. I really needed that myself today. And so most of the classes are really sort of geared toward my own needs as a human being in a body. and to be in community working with this material with other people. So yeah, I want to play a little bit more. And this is an idea, it's called like, this is a Laban thing called gathering and scattering. And so the gathering is like bringing to yourself, like resourcing. And you could be gathering in the space around you. You could be gathering in the community. You could be gathering in like whatever you need. And it could be in your imagination, like, oh, here I am, like in my little copse of trees, and I'm gathering the sunlight and I'm gathering in the fresh air. Like it could be a made up story, or it could be like, I'm just enclosing with my body. I'm crossing midline, I'm closing in, I'm bringing into myself. So the gathering in could be any kind of gathering. I'm scooping up, I'm bringing down, I'm gathering in. And then the opposite of that is scattering. I'm letting it go. I'm sharing it with you. Here, have some. Or I'm throwing it out. I don't need it. Let's get rid of that. Oh yeah, or you're sowing the seeds. You're spreading the seeds all over the place. So these ideas like of gathering and scattering like are very primal to our existence as human beings. Like scattering the seeds, there's many ways of doing that, or gathering in the harvest. So harvesting would be another way of gathering. I mean, in a way, when we come back together and talk, it's like sort of harvesting the information, what landed. And it's also scattering and sharing the information and the inspiration. So part of that, we can go with this sort of gathering and scattering at the same time, scattering on one side, gathering the other. And that is often very much within this horizontal plane. So kind of letting myself swim, maybe not swim, I don't know. My arms are kind of swimming, kind of not swimming through the horizontal plane. And as I'm there, I can also play with these ideas of that rotation, of that collarbone scapula. We call it even like, what is it? Scapula pinky connection, like this base of the scapula, which are scapulas. I wish I had a scapular bone because they're so beautiful. They are these big triangles, but they're very three-dimensional knobs popping out and underneath very smooth, that are connecting onto our back. And they are a support for our arms, right? They are a support for our arms. When our scapula are moving around, we have more support from our whole system working together. So a lot of the idea of like posture being rigid, where we don't move things very much, which is a sort of very Western idea of embodiment, or not now, but was. I mean, people who wore corsets and stuff like that, like suck it in. That's like kind of the opposite of this life energy that could be pulsing through and connected to bone, tissue, organ, all working together, all sort of in this alive system. Yeah, so those are just some ideas of Laban, of that system. There's a bunch of different ways of looking at it. And we played a little bit with effort in the light and the strong, rising with lightness, going down with strength. We can open out in a sort of indirect way, and then we can cross in a very direct way. So that's an idea of indirect space effort, where I'm checking it all out, I'm seeing all the possibilities, what's out there, and then, oh, there's the possibility, boom, boom, I'm honing in on one. So that's a kind of effort in our movement, effort life, which isn't the effort of I'm working hard, it's effort like the dynamic quality. So the dynamic quality of the movement, rising with lightness, coming down with strength, opening, indirect, crossing direct. And it doesn't matter if you know any of these, they can also go with in a different way. I could rise with strength and come down with lightness, but generally it's going to go the other way around. So these are just part of that system, and I'm just throwing it out there because sometimes one thing lands on one day and something else lands on another day. And also on every day, those landings could be very different. Every day is a different day in your body. So some more things that are part of the system of Laban, which I find really valuable, are the ideas of mobility and stability. So here, I've got my legs kind of planted into the floor. My knees are moving, but my feet aren't. So I'm playing with sort of a stable feet on the floor, and yet mobile in my upper body. How do I need to balance my stability and my mobility? Or I could be stable on top and mobile on the bottom. And that feels really different. It's got a totally different personality. Like, what is that? So that's one thing. Then there's things like inner outer, which is the name of this class, that just dealing with that which is outside, that which is inside, going away, coming towards. Other ones are exertion and recuperation. So the idea of exertion, and the exertion and the recuperation could be just opposite poles of the same thing, or they could be very different things. Like I could be in vertical for a very long time, in my exertion in vertical, and my recuperation is moving into sagittal. Or I could be working so hard and my recuperation is laying down on the couch. Or I could be laying down on the couch and my recuperation is getting up and moving my body. So it's really that these things are balancing each other out. And another one is the idea of the individual and the group. So me, here I am, but us, here we all are. And for me, finding a balance where I have individual activity, individual life, and then group activity and group life is really, really important. And I feel like for most Americans, that with the rugged individualism, that it was part of our sort of heritage, rugged individualism does not always take into account the group. Sometimes Asian countries are very group oriented. So like, you wouldn't do something individualistic. You will really have to think of the benefit of the whole group. You don't go and do your own thing. So those are cultural differences of that idea of individual and group. How do we balance ourselves? And Americans could certainly use more groupness, and perhaps some Asian countries could use more individuality, so that we're finding that there's a balance where the wholeness pattern of individual group can be healthier, where we're not, oh my God, I'm taking on the weight of everything. And I'm one of those people that often does that. So I'm learning to like, let go of other people's stuff and just be like, okay, I'm just dealing with mine, and I'm clearing my stuff when I need to, and offering what I have to offer also. So that's a recuperation for me too. Like teaching is like, woo, I get to be with other people that are interested in this material. Yay. Anyway, that was a whole lot of information. So let's come in again. Let me grab my ottoman, which I just love that it's on wheels. And just final check-in before we end this. I do want to say that this is a total non sequitur, and that is that me and my boyfriend, Tonus Maximus on Facebook, are going to do a live stream this afternoon. It's mostly him playing music, and it's sort of all glam rock and sort of some old timey stuff, but I will be making a few appearances in there. So that will be at 4:30, and I'll try and put it up on my Facebook. I'll try and share it on my page, so it won't be just happening on his. Anyway, that was my public service announcement. Now let's come back to this moment, and how is everybody landing? What's going on? What is different, or what is the same? How do you feel in your system?
Something is inside of me in the moment, and I'm just, I'm trying to be helpful or whatever. But there's a part of me that doesn't want to talk. And I wouldn't have said that before I came to class. I did an NVC type thing earlier today, and I felt like it was helpful, but it was just too stressful.
Wait, what was it? Oh, what type of thing?
Oh, nonviolent communication.
Oh, NVC. Okay, yeah. I thought I heard NBC, and I was like, the TV show? I heard anyway, NBC. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually I can kind of discharge it. Well, usually it just makes me feel really good and seen and stuff. But today it was just a little heavy, and it was some good stuff there. So, when I came in, I don't know. I still had this need to speak. Now I honestly don't really want to speak. I feel very much into just using my other senses, more into listening, maybe tasting and touching. But yeah, I'm really not interested in speaking or even having a lot of, cool ideas, which I'm addicted to as a creative. But I don't even want to think. I just want to be in my body and move with it in the moment.
Well, that's a really beautiful sharing, and thank you for overcoming your desire. Although also you can always just give me the thumb or whatever, if you don't feel like, I know we have a really small group, so it puts a little bit more pressure on everybody, but don't feel like you have to say anything, because sometimes, and this work can be very nonverbal, experiential.
Mm.
And so Bonnie, Abby, anything to say, because I'm going to close it out. Got a thumbs up from Bonnie. And Abby, I know you've got all your stuff going on there. So thank you all for showing up. Really lovely to be with you and to move with you and to see you. And yeah, hearts to everybody. I'm going to close it. Thank you.